I'm Brigham with Ways to Well. I'm here to testify today at the U.S. Senate about the chronic disease crisis. I've been in the industry since I was 20 years old. I started out as a drug rep and pivoted to being a med device rep. After almost a decade of being behind the scenes of a broken industry, I started physician pharmacies and labs that allowed patients accessibility to cost-effective care, and I saw firsthand the corruption behind the scenes of the big insurance companies, the big pharmaceutical companies, and candidly their collusion with several big governmental entities. So when we even look at the FDA approval process, something that's staggering, people assume that just because something came through the FDA that it's safe. You know, in reality, over 90% of the products put in your body in surgery have never had a human trial. They've gone through the FDA's 510(k) approval process, which means there was never a human safety study. That's just one data point. Not to mention, I think it's 14 out of the last 15 heads of the FDA have gone to work for Big Pharma, the exact industry they're supposed to be regulating and preventing the corruption from occurring. Beyond that, Big Pharma has colluded with big insurance. A lot of people talk about the big pharmaceutical companies, but where they miss the mark is they're not pointing out the big insurance companies. Big insurance companies control 90% of the care in America. They control 90% of the prescription drug coverage in America. They have gone out and gobbled up the middlemen that were put in place in the 70s on behalf of the American people to protect us and protect our interests and drive down the cost of drugs. What happened? They were captured by the insurance companies and are now nothing more than glorified middlemen that have negotiated rebates with their buddies over at Big Pharma. Those rebates are what we would call kickbacks in any other industry. So why is insulin priced through the roof? Right now, the Senate is actually investigating the PBMs for how they're price gouging the American people over the last decade on insulin. They're doing the same thing right now with GLP-1s and weight loss drugs. Why can we compound a weight loss drug for a couple $100s a month, but the retail price point in this country is $1,300? These are life-changing drugs. These are truly drugs meant for diabetic populations. And who suffers from diabetes more than anybody? The poverty-stricken communities. So how in the hell are poverty-stricken communities going to be able to afford a $1,300 a month drug? And you say, well, the insurance covers it. The insurance artificially inflates that price. They never paid the $1,300. Then they pass the bill along to the employer at the end of the year, because most of the insurance coverage comes from employers. And so we, the people, are the ones fitting the bill for the corruption, the collusion, not only financially, but also physically. We have more chronic disease than we've ever had in this country while spending more on healthcare. It's 25% of the federal government's budget. It's the #1 risk to state budget. It's the #1 reason for bankruptcy. We have got to wake up and start asking tough questions. Are we going to allow Big Pharma, big insurance to sell the future of America down the road for dollars? Because that's what they're doing. Mark Twain said it best. There's liars, there's damn liars, and then there's statistics. Any number can be skewed. And one of the things I'm going to talk about in my speech today in front of the Senate is President Eisenhower's speech. So often people allude to the first half of Eisenhower's speech about the military-industrial complex, but they forget there's a whole second half of that speech. In the second half of that speech, Eisenhower warned the American people about the scientific industrial complex. What would happen if we allowed private interests and big corporations to capture and consume our scientific policies, procedures, our academia, our medical institutions? We are living that today. We know what's going to happen. It's going to transfer from patient outcomes and helping people live longer, healthier lives to profits and quarterly earnings. The best way to be profitable is to have sick people. You can't sell somebody who's not sick a drug. So if we keep people chronically ill, we keep people on the merry-go-round, we're allowed to continue monetizing their disease state. Pfizer's been in business 175 years, and guess how many diseases they've cured? 0. Congratulations, Pfizer.